Okay, so part 2 with this Xbox 360 Slim. I got it all put back together. It's working fine, reads games, boots up, no problem at all. So the next step, or the next plan with this 360 is to modify it. So I have purchased a Raspberry Pi Pico. Obviously I need a USB cable. It uses, or this particular one's going to use a 3K ohm resistor and then some jumper wires to solder to the board to perform the RGH3, the reset glitch hack. This is the first time I've ever done anything kind of this technical when it comes to modding and kind of changing the internals and the way the software works on the console. I've also purchased this, and this is not sponsored at all, not affiliated, but I needed something for these larger projects with the multiple different types of screws. I purchased this magnetic whiteboard from iFixit. Ideally, I'm going to put all the screws on there and label them so that when I'm putting it back together, I know exactly which ones go where, and it just helps me to do it in a more speedier process and make sure I'm using the correct screws. If you want one of them, I do have an affiliate link down in the description. If you do decide to purchase one from the link, I would get a small bit of commission from that. But like I said, there's no paid promotion on this. It's just something I thought would be really, really useful. And hopefully it is. So this is the first time using it. Anyway, enough rambling. The majority of this video is going to be me doing the modifications and the soldering, not taking the console apart. That already exists in multiple videos. I will kind of just do a quick transition from this stage to this stage where I've got the motherboard completely taken out, the shell is all taken apart. I've used this board here, this magnetic board. It's great. It's got things held. If I slowly tip it, ooh, a couple do try and fall. So it's not great for having something like, say, up on a wall. You couldn't really attach this to the wall and then put your screws next to it. Am I being ridiculous and asking for that? I don't know. I think the magnetism on the board could have been a bit stronger, but otherwise it's a pretty solid thing to use. I know exactly which screws are going to go back into which place. I've taken the 360S apart before, and I kind of know where most screws go just from either remembering, or it's pretty obvious that, you know, certain size screws like these really long ones only go into certain holes and will fit. So I still think it's useful. I'm going to keep using it. But anyway, this is now the stage where we need to kind of refer to a guide. I know I'm making a bit of a guide here. It's more of a guide / watch me attempt this. But obviously there are lots of strict steps that you have to follow in certain order to complete this modification. So I still need to get the CPU fan and heatsink off. I think I'm just going to keep them together. I'm not going to bother disconnecting the fan from the heatsink itself. And then we can go ahead and start to put together all the pieces that we need and then start doing some soldering. So let's go ahead and take off the X clamp first. And then at this point, I suppose the heatsink just kind of falls off because it's no longer being clamped in place. Let's remove that. Annoyingly, it will mean, I was going to say about the thermal paste I put down, I'm now going to have to maybe redo again, but we'll see. I might just have to put a tiny little dab on just to make sure I could just maybe scrape a bit of the edge and fold it in, but it doesn't matter. It was coping fine. When we get the modification done, we can actually bring up the temperatures, the internal temperatures of this, and we can keep an eye on how good, I suppose, or not good the thermal paste was. Right, from here, we are going to need to do a couple of things. First and foremost is going to be setting up our Raspberry Pi Pico. Now you can do this with properly made mod chips. The X-Flasher is one of them. Whatever that costs in your country, I know for me, this is a significantly cheaper alternative. I do appreciate that there's time and effort put into those mod chips, and people should be compensated financially for their time and their effort and the research. But personally, I'm just doing this as a project. I don't really see myself using this 360 a lot. I just want to do this as a quick project. So this Pico board cost £4. The delivery was a bit expensive. It was from the Pi Hut website. And then I purchased a bunch of jumper wires here. So there's a pack of, I think there was like 20, about 3 inches long. Hopefully that's long enough, where it's a male end and a female end. And then you just need a header. So I've got a couple here that this is what I took it from. I mean, you don't need this, but I'll explain why. So these pin headers, get that focused, there you go. You don't need these, but what I'm going to demonstrate in a second is something that I think will help make this a bit more useful or versatile for other projects. Obviously there it is on the end of this. So there's all the female connectors here for the wires, and there is that pin header. So I've got them all plugged in, ready to go. And then obviously you'll need a resistor. The resistor does depend on what board that you have. So at this stage, what we need to do is start to put together the Raspberry Pi, the Pico, get all the wires connected to it and soldered to the board. Once we have that soldered to the Raspberry Pi board here, in fact, we'll do this first. I need to flash some firmware onto the Raspberry Pi Pico so that it can be picked up by the software that's used to flash the NAND on the motherboard. So I'm going to switch over to my computer just now. I'm going to plug in the Raspberry Pi Pico, and we are going to flash it with the correct software. And then we'll come back and we'll do some soldering to this, ready for its setup. Okay, so go ahead and click on the first link in the description. That'll take you to this Xbox 360 Hub website for the RGH 3 guide. The website is sometimes hit and miss. It's been down for a couple of weeks. Some of the images don't fully work, but ultimately, as long as you're following this video and nothing majorly changes, then you should be okay. So if we just go through very quickly what they are recommending here, in terms of what console you have and what things you'll need, we will kind of find that we're okay with everything I've just mentioned, but let's just double check to make sure. So it will work on the original Xbox 360, the fat consoles. There are a couple of notes to take note of, but what I have in front of me is I have a Trinity motherboard. So the one we are working with on the Slim, Xbox 360 Slim, it is a Trinity motherboard. This link no longer works. Octal's Xbox 360 identification wizard, the server is not found. I'm going to guess the website's still up. Nope, maybe not. Let's go ahead and Google this, Xbox 360 identification wizard. There we go, so it'll take you to this. I'll link you to this. So the console we took apart was this one. It is a Trinity. I know that if you look on the back though, you'll see the power requirements. So it's a 12 volt, 10.3 amp. So that will work with RGH 1.2, RGH 3. We're obviously doing RGH 3. And that's pretty much it. So what you'll need, we've just obviously taken it apart. So if you got to the stage where you're taking it apart, or you're going to, you'll need the Torx bits to take it apart. You need a device to read the console's NAND. So I mentioned about the X flasher, there's NAND X, JR, blah, blah, blah. The one we are focusing in this video is the Raspberry Pi Pico. You'll need some 28 to 30 AWG single core wire, just standard wire you can find on Amazon. Soldering iron, obviously, and a bit of experience. It does say that we're going to be working with some tiny points. If you've never soldered before, I probably wouldn't recommend doing soldering on this as your very first attempt. I would find some broken piece of electronic equipment or something you're going to chuck out, open it up and just start desoldering components and soldering it back on. Do some practice. So we need to look into the resistors. So I have a Trinity board, so I can have a single 3 to 10k ohm resistor. That is the color banding along the resistor itself as well, so you can identify what resistance it is. And obviously we're using the Raspberry Pi Pico, so we need to go ahead and download the JRunner with extras, and we also need to download the Raspberry Pi Flasher, which is a Pico Flasher, which found at this link here. So again, both of these links will be in the description, as well as this website if it's still up and running. So in order to flash our Raspberry Pi Pico, we hold down the boot cell button on the Pico and plug it in, it should then show up as removable storage. We drag the .uf2 file to the Pico in File Explorer. It should automatically kind of disconnect, unmount on completion. And then if we load up JRunner, we should see the Pico flasher come up as a connected device. So this is where I'm at just now. I'm not going to go any further in terms of installing and wiring, soldering in wires. We are just going to do that. So here's a link to download the Pico flasher, picoflasher.uf2. If you're unsure with GitHub, whenever you're taken to a directory or the page, just click on releases and then choose the latest release and just go ahead and download that. Then obviously again with the JRunner, this one has been, the repository is archived, which means there's going to be no more updates made to this one. So if we go back to JRunner with extras, it is now being maintained by PhenonMod. So you click here, it'll take you to the new repo. The only problem with this is it doesn't give you the executable. Source code to the JRunner with extras executable requires proper support files package, blah, blah, blah. So this one requires you to kind of build it yourself. As of this video and right now, the JRunner found here, version 3.3.0 R4 will work perfectly fine, so you can go ahead and download that. So I've got them both downloaded. Here's my Pico flasher, here's the JRunner with extras. I'm now going to grab my Raspberry Pi Pico. Okay, so like I said, we have to hold down the boot select, which is this button here. If I could get this to focus. So you hold down boot cell there, and we connect it up, and it should read into the PC as a storage device. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Hold down button and connect it up. And then on the screen, you'll see it appears as a device. Nothing will happen on the board. You won't see any flashing lights as far as I'm aware, but we do have now, if we go into Explorer, we have our RPI RP2 drive here. It's 128 meg, or about 127. And all we're going to do is go over to here, Pico Flasher, drag. I'm going to hold down Control just so it does a copy rather than a move, and drop it in. And you can see there, instantly close down the Explorer window. And then what we'll do is I'll just disconnect it. Connect it back up. And it probably won't show, but that's fine, because what we're going to do now is go into JRunner and load it up. And you can see here it says Pico X Flasher. If it doesn't have the logo here, then it isn't seeing the Pico drive connected to your computer, and it isn't seeing the flash on the actual Pico itself. So at the moment, we are good to go. It says there, JRunner Extra, it's all up to date, all fine. It's seeing the Pico. We can now go ahead and disconnect that, and we can connect it to our Xbox 360, solder it in, and then we will then connect it back to the computer. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is, this can be done entirely how you see fit. I know these, the wires here that I'm going to use to connect the Raspberry Pi Pico to the board, they will need to be soldered to the Raspberry Pi at one end, and then one end would be connected to the board. And obviously I've got a female to male here, because the idea is I'm going to connect them to these this pinout header here, and this entire section of pinouts is going to be soldered to this board. The idea being this will be permanent to the board, semi-permanent, because you could just always desolder it, which then I can just remove the cables if I need to by just pulling them off the header. It's going to be a lot easier than having them soldered on. I think, I hope, maybe, I don't know. I'm going to go with this way anyway. So if we consult the pinout guide on the Raspberry Pi Pico board, we have all of the 7 cables, 7 wires being connected down this right-hand side. Sorry, let me get it the right way around. So if you've got your USB connector at the top, down towards the logo on this right-hand side, these 7, starting from the bottom, are going to be the ones that are going to be connected. Obviously, you can't just, well, you can just connect them in any order you want. I've gone ahead and copied all the different colors of the wires, and I will be connecting them as per the colour on the diagram, just so I'm 100% following the guide perfectly. But like I said, the first thing we need to do is get this pinout header connected to the Raspberry Pi Pico board. So the short legs are going to go into the board here, like so. So I'm just going to take that there, pop it through, and then on the flip side, I'm going to solder these legs in place so that this is a semi-permanent fixing. So I think just leaving it literally just like that should work fine. Now I'm going to put some flux on, but obviously given how this board is angled, it might run down the board, but it's a healthy amount of flux there. Get a soldering iron, get a good amount of flux, sorry, good amount of solder, and just, I'm going to put some on the tip to start with, and then just go ahead and tin and connect all these. Okay. So a quick inspection of this. I think those are going to be pretty good, pretty solid. Sorry if the focus isn't great on this. I've got my full zoom lens on this to try and get as close as possible, but it's not. I think literally the mat itself is the focus point, but that looks to me to be pretty solid. Yep, that's all good. So I'll just clean that up with a bit of IPA, and then we can move on to soldering these wires individually to the board. I think the order I'll go with is probably, yeah, I'll solder them to the board, and then we can just go ahead and, as simple as this, just take the female and connect it to the pin header out like that, and it's as easy as that. And then once we've got them all connected, we can then plug this Raspberry Pi Pico into our computer and have the software run its magic. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is focus on this area here. So again, following the guide, there's a bank of access points, for lack of a better word. So what we need to do is just add some extra solder to them to start with, just so that when we introduce the wires, they'll take a bit nicer. So a bit of flux on here. So I've got it on this board holder, which is kind of handy, kind of nifty. It's not strong enough to stop the rotation for some reason. I can't lock the rotation, so I can't lean on the board, but that's fine. So what we need to do is focus on the left-hand side, we've got the top two, the next row, and then a single one of the third row. So basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on there. And then the remaining two cables that we need to solder is on this bank here, and it's going to be the third row down, and it's the two there. So I just need to tin them, just add a bit of extra solder to that area, just so that when we introduce the wires, it's going to take better. So let's get that done. Okay, so we're probably gonna have to do things a little bit differently, because on the Xbox 360 Hub website, my God, sorry about the lights glaring here. It might be hard to see because it's not focused. Anyway, they talk about, after you've done all the wiring up for the Pico, they talk about adding in, let me see if I can find it up, here we go, an image of these. There's two wires we have to connect to the underside of the board, and these will be permanent fixings to the Xbox. So I think personally it's going to be better to do these first and then flip over and do all the wires for the Pico. So I'm going to keep this image just up on my iPad off the screen so I can obviously use it as reference. But all I'm doing here is just soldering 2 wires, and I'll tell you the points that we need to go to in just a second. So we will need, or you will need as well, the ability to kind of scrape away some of the solder mask on the board. So let's flip this around actually. Oh, is it not going to let me because it's too big? Damn it. Okay, let's just pull this out a second. Okay, so I might not be able to get close enough because this is the level of which I can zoom and have it focused. If I zoom in any more, there won't be any focus, but I'll use the image and put that on screen through editing to show you where and what I'm soldering to. So, and let's see where we're looking. So we're looking to be around here, and I think it's 1, 2, 3, 4th one in. So it's going to be this point here. Solder a wire from there. So we need to put a wire in, connect that. It's going to come then down to C. No, where's it going to go to? SMC underscore post. But that looks to be somewhere around here. Need to get my bearings. There's that square. So the R3, R22, that resistor there, there's a point above it that we need to solder to. There's actually 2 points. From the image, it looks to be the right of the 2. So I'm going to get my soldering iron back on. So I've got a length of wire here. It's obviously more than enough, but I want to, obviously at this stage, get it soldered in 1 point, get the length correct, and then just cut it down to length rather than it being too short. So let's go ahead and put just a bit of flux around this area, just like so. Where are we looking? Just there. Okay, so on the 3rd point, just like that. And then a bit more flux onto, I need to find it again. I think I found it, yeah, so it's around here. So I'm just going to tin this point up just a second. Okay, and then I think what I'll have to do is just bring that in to a rough position and then snip off the excess length. So we're looking about, where's it gone again? There it is, about here. Snip off the extra length. Right, I'm not 100% confident with that, so let me just have a quick inspection. Yeah, the wire itself is not taking every single part, so I probably need to tin that up a wee bit. Right, that seems a lot better. So that's the first of 2 wires. Ideally, if I can find some, we will put some Kapton tape down. Okay, so this obviously, as far as I'm aware, has to stay on the board. So I'm just going to go ahead and tape that down so it, 1, stays in place and 2, isn't going to get caught on anything, and that should be okay. Right, and then the second wire requires a resistor to be inserted in between one of the points. So the very first part that the wire is going to get soldered to is, let me just, so we need to look for C5R35, and that is roughly around here somewhere, right there, C5R35. And I think on this one, this is where we have to scrape away a bit of the solder mask to reveal a point that we can solder to, so bear with me. So it looks to be right in between the R and the 3, which is really tiny. So I think I've scraped a bit of that solder mask away. The problem is it's going to be so small. Right, okay. I've scraped, I think, enough off there. Let's get a bit of IPA on it just to clear that up. Right, so hopefully on your screen, I mean, I can't zoom in anymore, I do apologise, but that is somewhat obvious as to what I've just done. And then the second point that we have to solder to is, so we're about here, we've got to come all the way down to, move this up a little bit if I can, it's going to be towards the Microsoft logo, so just here, and it's the FT2V1. So this, that point right there. Yeah, so from this point here, we need one of these resistors. I don't think this is going to focus, it's not, yeah, it's the colour you need for a Trinity is a brown, black, red, gold. So I can see, sorry, brown, black, orange, gold. So here I've got, it's brown, black, orange, and then a gold band on it. I'm just going to trim that to an appropriate size. And ideally, I think what I'll do is I'll try and solder one of the legs to this point and then have the wire soldered to the other point. Okay, so it's going to be hard to see, but there's my resistor at the end of that wire. That one's going to go down. I'm going to connect that to the FT2V1, is it? FT2V1, yep. Some flux on there. Okay, just like that. Shouldn't be any issues with contact there for the board and the resistor itself. But what I'll do is towards the end, I'll get some Kapton tape and I'll kind of wrap those bare connections up. Probably should have done it before, but here we are. Let's go ahead and trace this up to where it needs to go. Now this is going to be the more challenging part, I think, here. Very small exposed copper on the board. I've got to get it to stick to that. I think it's tinned a tiny bit. Go ahead and try and connect that. Let's get a bit more flux. Okay, that seems to be a bit there on the exposed part, and then we'll just go ahead and tack that down, hopefully. Okay, it's made connection, it's in place. Let's go ahead and turn off the soldering iron for now, and let's just start taping things up. So just make sure there's no through holes here that it's gonna, any screws are gonna come through and hit the wire. Okay, right. That should be the glitch cables set up. All we have to do now is connect all of these other cables up for the actual the Pico. So let's go ahead and flip the board around. Let's see where we're looking at. Okay, so again, we're looking at this bank up here, and following the guide, the image, I'm going to go through and do each colour in the correct place as it is on the picture, so I can make sure that I've got every cable in the right place and go from there. So it looks to be brown top left, so let's go ahead and grab a brown cable. Yeah, let's switch on my soldering iron. Probably need a bit more flux. Okay, so like I said, brown goes to the top left. So I've got my male end here. Just going to put it next to that point. Hopefully. There we go, there's one. Next is black. Black's connected. Then onto the second row down, we've got orange and red, so orange being the first one. Okay, I'm not too happy with that. I'm going to just take it off, try and get a bit of a better connection there. Sorry I'm covering this up, but there we go. Let's get a bit more solder. Next we've got red. And then on the bottom, on the third row, sorry, we have a single cable which is yellow on its own. So again, I might cover this up with my hands. I'm a bit too shaky there, I need to reposition. No, we need some more solder and we need some more flux on this. Okay. No, don't like that yellow one. It's a bit too close to the others. Okay, I think that'll do. It's probably not the best approach I have. I think it'll do, but whatever. Okay, so the next one is on this second bank here, which annoyingly some of these wires are kind of covering. We've got blue on the left. Let's go ahead and do blue. And then finally green on the right. So again, let's try and get some of these cables out of the way, wires. Okay, so I think that is it for the soldering, because obviously our Raspberry Pi Pico board has the male headers on that we can just take each of these wires and now plug them into the correct port. Once they're all plugged in, we can go ahead and begin to do this. Okay, so at this point I've got it all put back into its shell, the chassis itself, and really only thing we need to do from here, basically I've now got to connect all of the cables in that kind of order. Right, so we take the board in the correct orientation. The very first pin is going to be the green one, so I'll take the green female, plug it into the male. I'll try and orient these all the same way. Then it goes to blue. Then we've got, what comes next on the black? Find the black cable. I'm trying to be as delicate as I can with this because I know these wires, the way they're soldered to the board isn't for strength, it's just pure connection. What's next? We've got black, then we've got red. Go ahead and connect that up. After red, we've got yellow. After yellow, we've got brown. And then finally, orange. Okay, that's all connected. I'm just going to have it kind of hanging outside the board here. We can go ahead and now move over to the PC, where we will I'll connect all this up and get it on a different camera, and hopefully we'll connect up the Raspberry Pi to the computer and it'll be able to read the NAND, and we'll go from there. Right, okay, so now we've got it at the computer. What we can do is connect it all up. Like I said, we're going to connect power, but we're not going to turn it on. So we are going to plug in just the power, actually. We don't need the HDMI. Let's plug that in. Okay, just like that. And then with the USB for the Pico flasher, I'm going to get that cable just ready. And let's have a quick look at our instructions again. So if we go back to the guide, so it says, once you're happy with the points, they're connected properly and your NAND cables are installed, it's time to glitch the console, give your console standby power and connect your programmer. Follow the steps below. So let's go ahead and connect this up. That way. Okay, Windows is ready, that's fine. So let's load up JRunner. There it is. It's recognized the Pico flasher. I'm just going to bring this side by side a second. So step one says identify the console. To begin, press the question mark in the JRunner to make sure your program can see your console properly. We get console not found. Okay, so let's do a quick close of that because it was open. We have yellow going into the third option, the third port connector, whatever. And then we have blue on this side. Oh, I see what I've done. This is supposed to be the third row down. On my soldering, I've done the second row down. So let's go ahead and fix that. Right, okay, so after that incredibly bad error, I'm hoping nothing bad's happened to the board or anything like that. Let's go ahead and test that again. So I soldered them to the wrong points. This should be an example of why you should test or check your points have been soldered on to the correct places. Check them 2 times over. Don't just check them once, check them again. And then let's go ahead and connect the power. And finally, let's go ahead and connect up the JRunner again. So Connect that up, try not to press the boot cell. So it reads it, fine, good. JRunner, I'm just going to close it and reopen it just to make sure it's all good. Minimize that. So it reads the Pico flasher. We're going to click to query the console type. And thank the Lord, it's worked. So we've read that it's the Trinity, 16 megabytes. So it's it can read the console. Let's go down to the instructions again. So identify the console, done. Step 2 to read the NAND. So let's go ahead and click read NAND. Okay, so on step 2, it will do 2 reads of the NAND. I assume for kind of safety procedures where if it reads it the first time and it reads it slightly corrupt and assumes it's correct, then that's a bad thing. So it reads it a second time, compares them together, and if they're both the same, then ideally it's read the NAND correctly and it's all good. So we've done that. We've loaded the NAND twice. It automatically selected glitch 2. I'm just going to tick RGH 3 as well, just to make sure. And now we move on to step 3. So it says, once the NAND has been read, select the following options on the right hand side under XE build. So it kind of did the glitch 2 for us and RGH 3. We don't have to select the megahertz. It says 10 if try 27. I think that's fine. So do that, and I think we then click on create ECC. So let's go, sorry. Oh, we should be creating Zell, but that might just be different. Yeah, this is a slightly different version. Let's go ahead and create the Zell, if that's even how you pronounce it. I assume that was it done very quickly, probably. Zell image created. Okay, write Zell. So once Zell's been created, click write Zell. Let's go ahead and click that. Writing glitch.ecc to NAND. So this is uploading the glitched like flashing it with the glitch one. Once we've done that, we can then go to step 2, which says get CPU. So at this point, once ECC has been written to console, unplug your program and connect an Ethernet cable and HDMI AV cable. Your console should boot into Zell Reloaded. If you didn't plug in an Ethernet cable, take note of the CPU key on your screen. It's rather long, so I suggest taking a photo. Yep, no problem. So you can, if you want, connect this up to your network somehow, and then you can just grab it from here, get CPU key, but this console isn't on the network. One thing I saw someone recommend is to back up what's been dumped. So if we go into our folder here, we've got output, and we have the 2 here. I'm just going to make a copy of these just in case they disappear for whatever reason. Paste it there. Let's go to, so once it's been, unplug your program and connect. Right, so I think we leave this as is, and we just we unplug it. So let's go ahead and unplug that. Now get in our HDMI cable, and unfortunately I think I'll have to stop recording here on my main screen and instead record my Series X. So unplug your program and connect an Ethernet cable, HD cable, you should now boot. Didn't. Okay, so now let's switch over to Xbox and power it on. I need to see that purple screen. Oh, it did. Oh, amazing, amazing. Right, okay, let's keep going from here then. So what I'm going to need to do is just boot up a notepad. Okay, you should skip that, yeah. That's fine, that's fine, that's fine. Right, so at this point, you need to copy down your CPU key. I'm also going to copy down the DVD key as well, just in case, but that looks 0. Right, okay, so now I assume, power it down. Go ahead and disconnect AV cable, still leave it powered in and powered on. So now you have your CPU key. You'll be able to make your hacked image, click create XEL build, and it will create your hacked image, which you'll need to write to your console. So yeah, plug it back in. Go back over, it says that's all good. Now obviously you'll be able to make your hacked image, click create XEL build, and it'll create your hacked image. So I think we need to give it the CPU key here. So I'll go ahead and copy that. Paste it in. So CPU key is correct, add key to database, moving files from blah, 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 blah. NAND initialization finished. Cool, so now we create XE build image. So let's go ahead and click that, just make sure we're all good. Yep. So converting image to RGH, conversion finished. That seems like it worked. And then step 7 is to, once XE build image has been created and the JRunner log shows no errors, click write NAND, and voila, you have completed the RGH3 hack on your console. Unplug your programmer and power on your console. If you power on with eject, you should see XEL. Okay, so it's final step then, step 7, write NAND. And that is right, successful. Right, so I'm again just I'm going to go into the folder and just make sure. So XE build, that's all that, that's fine. I think there's somewhere I need to go to get all the file, but common, this. Got to make sure we keep a copy of this. This is our bin, so our original bin, and then this is the flashed kind of hacked version. So I'm just going to make a copy of this. I know we already made a copy earlier, 360 Mardian. I'm going to paste it there just so I've got it. Okay, so now what we can do is go ahead and I'll just minimize that for now, minimize all this. Let's switch over to the Xbox. I'm going to disconnect that. And it said if we power on and eject, we should see XEL. So I'm just going to In fact, I'm just going to power it on. Oops, didn't mean to press it twice. So I turned it off again. It has. There we go, my bad. I accidentally hit power on, then power off immediately after. So we should have, that's it, a perfectly normal booting Xbox 360. There won't be anything that is on the system that we can actually do or use. And that comes in the next part where we're going to put on a custom dashboard, which means we can then access all of the extra features and use cases that modifying your Xbox with the RGH, the reset glitch hack, enables you to do. So I'm so happy that that worked. I was panicking and worrying a little bit at different times, but it seems to have worked perfectly fine. It's booted up, and yeah, I'll go ahead and I would obviously recommend you disconnect this now. You no need to have the Raspberry Pi Pico connected to it, or your X Flasher no needs to be connected anymore.